So good morning, everybody. Good morning, Brenda. Good morning, Anne, and good morning, Geraldine.
Morning.
Everything.
Say that again, Anne.
For an amateur like me, I need to see the start.
Well, there's a
it's
good
important
thing,
to see
isn't
the
it?
start of the picture.
So just to
Plenty of
explain.
time today.
All right.
Thank you.
So just to explain from the very basic stuff, we'll be painting on a small canvas. Look, so that's under my head. That's 8 by 10. I've got an 8 by 10 head. Yeah, so but something small like that every day will do you much more good than painting a large painting over several weeks. So if you can do something like that a day, or even half that size, 5 by 7, a single object, it'll improve your painting no end. Okay, so the colors we're going to use here, so titanium white, cadmium yellow pale hue, permanent rose, cobalt blue, ivory black, and burnt umber. We use the burnt umber for the drawings because it's not too dark. If you start using black, it'll affect your painting, sort of it'll come through into your painting.
Okay.
And all right, so you got ivory black is only for making shadows. Only for making shadows. You never use it any other way. Cobalt blue, these are your 3 primary colors.
Yes.
And white for doing the rest of the stuff. You can't do without white. Okay. So.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to put that down there. There.
You can hear me now.
Yes. Right. So the brushes we're going to use.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. So he can hear everything. We can. So we're talking now.
Okay. So the brushes I'm going to use are I'm going to put on a wash on the canvas with that. Okay. I'm either going to use that one, which is the number. I think the number's worn off him. I think it's number 6, Filbert. Oh, here, maybe that's a number 6, Filbert. That must be a number 4, Filbert. That's a number 1. Okay, so I'll probably use either of those 2 plus that one. Okay. I think I'll use that one. Yeah. Okay. And now I'm going to put a wash on here because this is a white canvas and we don't want to paint directly onto white.
Mm-hmm.
Many artists do paint directly onto white, but I don't. I think it's a better idea to paint on a toned surface. There are various reasons for that. First of all, we've got to actually make a mark on the canvas because it's accusing us of not painting in. Okay, yeah, you're faced with a white sort of thing that's you've got to produce a work of art on, and it's quite sort of I don't know how you say, impressive or sort of overwhelmed by this thing. So we're just going to take that sort of whiteness off it. Okay. All right, so I did that using burnt umber oil paint. Burnt umber oil paint plus the solvent. I'm using Turks at the moment because there's nobody else in the room with me, but I tend to like to use Zested when there's lots of people here because it's less sort of pungent. White spirit, Turks, all that kind of stuff, Sansador, they're quite volatile really and not good for your health. Right, I'm going to wipe that back because I don't want it to be too slick when I start painting. So we've made a kind of a mid-tone on our canvas, which is great because it's more like the palette. It's more easy to judge the colours when you're painting. Just the tones, actually, more because you go up to light tones and down to dark tones. Right, and so we're going to start drawing. And when you draw, you really should do measuring. Okay, so and the way to measure is this. Now, watch this. I'm going to do it for you because it's different for me. My angle of viewing is different. So if I bring my brush up here, okay. I stretch my arm so that my elbow is locked, and I'm sitting in the position that I'm going to paint. And I bring the brush up there, I put the point of it on the top of that flower head there, and bring my finger down to there. Okay, that's it. And now my arm can't, because my elbow is locked, I can't sort of ruin that sort of by moving. And then I turn around and see, well, how is it compared to its width? It's about, oh, it's kind of like just bigger than half, you know, from one side to the other. So whatever length I've got, whatever height, it's the width is just over half. Okay, I'm going to sight the painting right in the middle. I'm going to give myself a center line because it's useful in this circumstance. Okay, give myself a center line that way as well. None of this is actually being measured with, oh God, I think I'm going to mute you actually for a while until the drawing's done. It's just that there's a lot of clattering going on. Let's have a look. Tum, 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 tum. Mute, mute, mute. Can you all hear me still, and give me a thumbs up? Yeah, great, perfect. Because the video recording I do will have sort of plates clattering, or dogs barking, or people talking over one another. So, all right, so here we go. So I know that the width is about slightly over half the height. So I know that if I place my bottom of the vase there, I know that the top is going to go there, and I know that the width is going to be something like that, there, that amount. So it's a relative measurement. It's not a kind of a millimeter or inch measurement. It's very sort of up to you kind of thing. All right. So now we know that the flower heads are going to come out to here. So we can draw a box, can't we? We know that the painting is not supposed to come out further than that. The whole painting, the vase and the flowers together. Okay. So let's see how high that vase is compared to the flowers. Right, 2/3. Okay. Would that be the way it works? So if I go 1/3, which is the flowers, I'll tell you what. Let's have a look. Let's compare the flowers side by side. All right, so let's have a look. I'll do this for you now here. So the flowers, we know what the width is. We know what the width is. What's the height of the flowers? It's a bit less than the width, isn't it? It's about 4/5 of the width. It'd be about something like that distance there. So we know that the flowers should occupy something like that. Okay, so that means that the top of the vase is there. Okay, and now I'm going to start drawing, because I kind of know pretty much the lie of the thing now. Okay, so I'm going to draw in straight lines, remember, if you've been with me before. Okay, I'm just going to push that over to the left a little bit there. There. Straight lines. I'll push it over to the right of the center line a little bit. Okay, we've got the lip of the vase. Move that up there like that. Drawing and painting are all about making a mark as accurately as you can, and then changing it, to make sure the thing's in the right place. I'd love to be able to push this canvas over there, or sorry, this palette over there, so that you can see it. But the thing is, then I won't be able to reach it. So I apologise for that. If there's any very sort of important types of mixing, I'll just drag up the palette and put it on here and tell you what I'm mixing. Okay, so now we've got a kind of a bit of a representation of how the vase is going to fall. Don't forget there's an ellipse there. Ellipses are done in straight lines. Okay, we've got a horizon somewhere about there. I always call it a horizon because I never figured out what to actually sort of call it. But where the background meets the foreground. Okay, it goes like that. And it goes through the vase, obviously. And now, and the flowers, or sorry, the foliage kind of goes like that. You see that negative shape there? See that shape there? It's kind of like almost like a square. That's a negative space that you've got. It helps you to draw. Okay. Kind of comes up from there. Flower heads. I'm going to put those flower heads in. So there's a kind of a. Do you remember the old 50p's? The 50p shape there. Okay. There's something next to it. I don't know what shape you call that, but it is a shape. We can put that in. And there's a flower head up here, which is the highest point of this painting, actually. Something like that. All the rest of that is foliage. Foliage. Okay. This object is casting a shadow, isn't it? Because the light source is kind of up here somewhere, about 12 inches, in fact, away from the flower heads. And the light is coming down and it's illuminating everything here, And this is of this object, although it's kind of transparent, is an object and it's casting a shadow. So there's a shadow there like that. I can see that. Shadow there like that. Bit of a shadow. This is linen, this white thing. A bit of a shadow there. And then this is all kind of nice and light, and it comes away and it starts getting darker over here. What else have I got to put in? Oh yes, well there's foliage inside that vase as well, isn't there? I can't forget that. So there's a dark one on the center line, there's one there. And there's a bit of foliage coming up there. It's like an N. You can see that, it's like an N. You watch out for things like that, you know, that shapes that you recognize. You know, for example, that's 50p. And this is a kind of an N shape there. You're thinking in those terms. All right. I'm just going to beef up those shoulders a little bit. Okay. Ahem. Now, that's the end of the drawing, and I'm going to turn you back on just for a minute. I'm going to unmute you all and just ask you for any questions. And would there be any questions? Yes, Anne.
The water line, do you put that in the vase?
Do you know what, Anne? You're damn right. Didn't I forget it? Not only is there a water line, thank you very much. It's all about observation.
Not at all.
Okay, yeah, okay, so
Yeah.
there. Right, so that's the water.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, Anne. Thank you very much. I left it out on purpose.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Yes, Jer.
Can you hear me? Ah, great. I'm just wondering, say, when you were putting on the burnt umber, is that like an acrylic or is that an actual oil? That's acrylic, is it?
Well, look, I started out in my art classes like 15 years ago, and I told everyone to bring a tube of burnt umber acrylics, because I thought that,
yeah,
well, people will start painting and then they'll be confused. If they draw on with oils, sorry, they'll talk to you. If they draw on with oils, they'll it'll confuse people, and it'll just be another layer of difficulty in an already kind of difficult task kind of thing. And then then people were bringing in the next week the brush that they'd used for the acrylics, and you could kill somebody with it, you know, because the acrylics had dried, they hadn't washed it out properly, so they were ruining brushes. And I thought, okay, all right, we'll change to watercolor. So I had everyone bring in little sort of tubes of burnt umber watercolor. And then I thought, nah, simplify it again. We'll just do it in oils, and I'll just tell people not to do it too, too thickly. So just have to do a light sort of drawing with your burnt umber oils, and everything will be okay.
Yeah.
And it'll save you time, and it'll save you headspace. Now, just on this point, something I do want to get across is that you don't have to use burnt umber. It's just that I standardized it for the class, and it's a kind of like a go-to color, a tube of paint for this kind of activity. But you could use blue, a hot pink. You wouldn't use white. You can't use white, and you can't use white in the color either, because that will have an effect on your painting, which you don't want, because it'll turn everything pale. You don't want that. You want your bright colors to be bright. And you wouldn't use black either, because black is harsh. So everything else you can use. All right. Even yellow, I think.
Yeah.
Yellow could be a little bit bright anyway. But I think you have to just be judicious about it. Any other questions?
Sorry, so do you mix the burnt umber oil with a little bit of zest? Is that what you were saying earlier? I'm kind of missed that.
Yes, yeah, you can use zest, or you can use terps, or you can even use white spirit. I mean, white spirit isn't so good because it makes your paintings a bit sort of dull, but it does work. If in a pinch, you can use white spirit. But I prefer using zest because of the pungent nature of those solvents. They're volatile, not good for you.
Sorry, what's that?
Okay, thanks, man.
Sorry, Kevin, what's that? Zest?
Zest it. So it's ZEST hyphen IT. And you can get it in Evans. You can get it in, or you can send away for it as well.
Oh, okay. And what proportion?
In Northern Ireland.
What proportion?
Well, now how long is a piece of string there? Like, I mean, it's just when you do the wash should be sort of washy. It's like water.
Yes.
Yeah. But the drawing, I kind of use light touches of pure, maybe a little bit of a solvent in it, just to make it more movable.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, what you don't do is you don't slap it on. You do see it sometimes because people are different, and you see people sort of putting great big, wadges of burnt umber, and then that all comes through into your painting. You see, you don't want that. You want to really keep it out.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
No, not at all. So I'm going to mute you all again, and then we'll go on to start painting. Yep. Right, you're all muted. Can you hear me? Thumbs up? Yeah, great. Lovely. So what we're going to start out with, I think, is the nice bright colours here, because we've got a reasonably clean brush. That requires that painting requires to be sort of bright. I've forgotten something that I should tell you, which is very, very important. Okay, actually, it's the next step. Once you finish drawing, or even before you started drawing, you'll notice things. It's the high point, the lightest light, and the darkest dark, and we've got to have that in our mind, where both those things are, the brightest bright in this painting and the darkest dark. Right, so I'm looking at that, and there's a big spotlight up there. So I can see that the brightest bright is not the flowers, even though they're the kind of star of the show. I'll put one in there as well. But it's this, the brightest bright is just here. You can see it there. That's that little point there. That's a very, very sort of bright reflection of what's going on up here with these bulbs that I've got going. Okay, so even the white down here is not anywhere near as bright as that. So everything's got to be darker than that point, everything. And everything's got to be lighter than the rim of this, I think. And down here, very, very dark. All right, so that's an important thing. I always tell people this, and Brenda's going to be bored out of her mind now, because I say that when I was a kid, 16, 17, I left school, I went to become a printer, and there was a scanner in this workshop that I was in, and it occupied the size of this room, like, I mean, it was a big thing. But the scanner operator had to do exactly that, You had to go through each transparency, looking for the brightest bright and the darkest dark, and key in the coordinates on the computer of this scanning machine. And now your desktop scanner that you have with your printer and fax or whatever it is all rolled into one does that automatically with software. But the point is, it is doing it. It is being done. And you, as a painter, you need to look out for that. Okay, so let's start with the with those flower heads. So I'm going to mix yellow, cadmium yellow, pale hue, and permanent rose. You're probably not getting a great sort of view of what's going on here because of, you know, webcams and you know, computer screens not being calibrated and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just mixing up that kind of yellow. But it isn't as bright as I'm making it. And this brings us to one of the important things about painting, is that you're never solving problems. You know, paints are inadequate to the job of you know, that we require of them. You know, and all palettes are different. Everyone has a different palette. Everyone has a different way of resolving these issues. But they're never really fully resolved. You see, it's you're not solving problems. You're coping with them. Okay, and I'm sort of coping with the fact that these sort of flowers are kind of a color that's almost unachievable. So you forgive yourself and you say, okay, I'll put in what I can. I'll do what I can. Right, so the flowers are kind of very bright across here, and they're a bit sort of in shade in certain parts. To make that shadow, I'm going to add in a little bit of ivory black, your shadow maker, into that yellow, and a touch of red, okay? And I'm going to put those in. No petals. This will become apparent. We're not in the business of painting actual individual petals. We are not botanical illustrators, but painters are we. I'm beginning to sound like Yoda. So we don't even know who he is. My daughters all watch things like that, Lord of the Rings and everything. So, so I've got some yellow here. I'm going to put that in there like that. See, no petals, big dabs. This is the thing about oil painting. There's even one in there, put that in there. Oil painting is about sculpture more than it is about painting up to lines. Okay. Now, I'm going to mix up that green. Do this again because it's worth, you know, going back to basics. A green, what would you make a green? There is no green on this palette, but we can make a green, can't we? We can make a green out of yellow, and cobalt blue. Now, when you look at that green, even from my point of view, it's a little bit of a toxic green, all right? So we add a little bit of red into it to make a natural green. Should have made a bit more there, shouldn't I? Slap on the wrists. I need more paint than that, because you want the paint to flow. Okay, so there's our natural green. Take that off of there. Now, we've also got, actually, I'll do this in front of you as well, because you didn't see me do it the last time. So there's the color that we made up for the object that we're going to paint, like leaves are green. These leaves are green. But there's also leaves that are green, that are in shadow. We're going to use a little bit of ivory black to make the shadow. Okay, that's it. You only ever use ivory black to make shadows. All right. Now, let's use a little bit more ivory black in there because things are a little bit darker than they do there. Right. So I've made up a kind of a green for my foliage. Put a bit of oil in there. And here goes. That's dark there. Do you know what? I might darken it again. I want those flower heads to look bright. Right. Dark. 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 Okay. Dark. Dark. Okay. See, we're not painting individual. We're not painting individual leaves or anything here. We're kind of squinting. Let me show you. Let me show you. When you start painting anything, I'll tell you to squint. Yeah, like that, or take your glasses off or something. But you squint. But eventually, when you're used to it, you're trying to even out the tones, so to bring them down into as few tones as possible, to reduce, like looking through an obscure window, obscure glass in the window. It reduces everything down to sort of just, you can imagine sort of through glass, and it turns everything into just sort of pure tones, blocks of tone. But eventually, you won't do that, but defocusing. So defocusing is where you'll get to. Squinting is where you start. Eventually, you get tired of doing that. You don't need to do it anymore. You just kind of look at that, and you're looking in front of the object, and 1,000 miles beyond the object as well, and you're just seeing the vagueness of this thing, and that's what you're painting. So from squinting to defocusing. So that's too bright. Next, leaves. We're only this whole stage that we're currently engaged in is known as blocking in. We're just blocking in the sort of most general shapes. Okay, we're going to come back into this later. Let's do another dark one there. And there was a dark one here that I didn't want to do with that light tone there. There. Right, okay, so let us move on. I'm going to do the stalk, the stems of the flowers as they come into here. So there's a really nice dark there. Probably have to reiterate those later on. Okay. All right, done that. Now, what shall I do now? I shall do some of the darker tones of the vase. Okay, so I'm going to use blue, cobalt blue, white, I'll take that back. I'm not going to use white there. I'm going to do blue and permanent rose. I was going off on being a bit ahead of myself there. Right, so I've got a kind of a darkish blue. which is not the darkest dark. It's just for the kind of shoulders here, coming here. There. See, dabs. We're not sort of getting down into forensic details. People get into forensic details and too early on in a painting. There's dark down there. Look at that there, nice and dark. Dark there. Dark down the side of there. That's there. Dark. Dark. Okay. That's pretty dark there as well. Okay. I'm now going to bounce around. Do you know what? Like, this is another thing that I was thinking about this last night, sort of about how to sort of explain alla prima painting. And here's a good example. So what I tend to find people doing, right, is they'll become fixated on those things that they like, which is the flowers or the nice vase. And so they'll continue working on it, and they'll work on it, and they'll work on it. And then they run out of time to do the they like, and the painting looks incomplete. Alla prima paintings are all about blocking in every part of the painting. And if you think that you won't have time to do backgrounds and foregrounds, you do them out to there. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to go all the way to the edges in an exercise. The important parts are in the center. So you do everything, and you try and do everything together. All right. So now I'm going to do that linen foreground. So I'm going to mix up. I'm going to mix up this, but although there's a lot of white in it, it's not white. Okay, and I'm going to do this just to show you. Okay. Right. Okay. So we're going to grab a lot of white there, titanium white, but we're also going to put in red, blue, the yellow into it. We're also going to put a little bit of ivory black into it, just to bring down the tone. Okay. A bit more red. More yellow for the warm parts. Okay, something like that maybe. It's got to be this so-called white cloth in the front. It's got to be darker than that point there. Got to be. So I've made up a kind of a color which is slightly darker. Okay, and now I'm going to make the shadow of it. The shadow is slightly. It's actually not such an intense shadow. Mind you, there is one just up here. Yes, okay, but we'll do that first. Make up that it's bluish. So I can see a shadow there. So I'm going to put that in first. It's kind of a triangle shape of. Right, okay. And it kind of comes off there like that. And then that one is kind of roughly similar there. Okay. It then goes a little bit lighter and bluer because the light is being filtered through that vase. So light's coming through the vase and hitting the cloth, but it's hitting it with a kind of letting a lot of blue light through. So my shadow is going to tend towards the blue. Okay, like that. That's in there as well. Just observing this, what's going on here, as it comes across here. it gets slightly pinker and redder, but still sort of reasonably dark. But it's good to sort of observe these things. Okay. This is still only blocking in. Okay. And then we've got the bits that are kind of what we would have hitherto called white, but now we know is not white. It's everything. Okay. Put that in there like that. It goes slightly greenish actually as it goes off to the left. Maybe that's a reflection of the leaves. I'm sure it must be. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to bounce back to here again because the light is coming through here and it's revealing this to us, but it's also sort of showing this foreground through here, but mediated through blue. But it's kind of a grayish, reddish blue. And put it in there like that. And it's here, and it's here. And it comes up the side of the vase there. Oops, yeah. And it comes down into here. Everywhere I see that blue, I'm going to put it in. Okay. All right. And then I can see as the light comes across here, it goes sort of violet. Because all of this stuff teaches you to observe, and you start seeing things everywhere. So eventually you kind of look at things and you know, oh God, yeah. Can you see the violets in that? And the people who are with you, no. So they've never had to do it. There, violet there. A violet there. Yeah. Right, there's a darker reddish blue here. Put that in there like that. Right. Okay. So now we're going to bounce around again. We're going to bounce up to the background. And this is where your sort of there's a decision to be made here, because I could paint the background as it actually is in that grey, or I could make a decision as an artist to say no, the grey is not going to show the flowers nicely enough. It's going to have to be darker than that. So I'm actually going to mix up burnt umber. I'm going to make the background very dark. It's my decision. I'm the artist. I'm God in this situation. I'm sorry, but there it is. All right, so I'm going to mix a bit of burnt umber and blue. Okay. Okay, so in there. And here's where oils is all about sculpture. Where you think your drawing needs adjusting, you push the paint back. You're pushing that blue back into position. And you've an opportunity of afterwards pushing it back the other way when you start sort of refining your painting. Okay, so So the general sort of rule of thumb is that if you want an object to look brighter, you put something dark next to it. If you want something to look warmer, you put something cool next to it. Okay. I'll show you something in a moment. Which is the, I don't know, payoff, I suppose. Let me just go back. I'm going to make more of those flower heads before I continue. All good? Can I have thumbs up? If everything's sort of, you can hear everything and it's all good. Excellent. Right, here we go. I'm just going to make more of those flower heads, okay? I don't know what these flowers are. My wife found them on a walk somewhere, probably in somebody's front garden. Okay. All right, okay. Clean the brush down. Now, this is oil painting. To make the petals, you push the paint in, like that. What you don't do is paint petals. That's how you achieve petals. And you can do that with oils, and you can do that in acrylic sand, just the same. If you're quick, the only difference with acrylic is you probably won't have the opportunity for the paint to actually push the other paint away. You've got to kind of mimic it in acrylics. You know, you've got to kind of, so in other words, you're painting over, but you don't do it in a kind of a precise, you know, number one brush way by going, you go, see what I mean? Yeah, okay. Okay, that's it. Just going to finish off the background. See, if I put just the what was there in the actual sort of background here, I don't think the flowers would look as bright. The whole idea was to make the flowers look bright, okay? So now we've got the whole painting blocked in, okay? And now I'm going to do some refinement, I suppose. Right, so we can start pulling the painting together. There's a lovely little sort of violet around here that I'm going to put in. So blue permanent rose. I should moderate my voice because I think I'm sort of busting the cameras or the microphones. Right, so it was blue, cobalt blue, permanent rose, and white. I can see that here. there's similarly there, it goes up there. Okay. There's a shadow coming down here. This is all refinement, so I'm not moving too far from what I had there in the first place. So in other words, I'm not going to make mud. So what happens is the people paint something and then they try and radically change it, and that turns the paint into mud, and you get a mud painting, which you don't want. Okay, so shadow down there. See, none of this is sort of illustration, tiny moving paint around and everything until you feel that it's right. It's about dabs. There's a reflection of this going on here. Okay. There's a much darker part there. I'm going to put that in. These are all refinements now. We can do these refinements because we've got the blocks of tone in there. Here. Here. And here. See, I'm not blending stuff. Pushing that up there like that. I'm filling in the so that there's no kind of background coming through. I did say before that you can have the background coming through. I don't think it works in this case, so I'm going to sort of carry on regardless here. That there. Make sure that that's in. Okay, we've got some blue there. It kind of goes a bit blue as it goes over there. Let me get my bigger brush back. Goes a bit darker there. Okay. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Now, there's, we need to deal with that, the neck of the vase and the, what do you call it, the lip. So in fact, there's a blue there, and there's a very dark, and I'm going to put that in next. So blue, ivory black, and permanent rose. I'm trying to get as dark as I can. Okay. Must be difficult to actually see the subtleties, I suppose, on the computer screen. But push that across. Push that there. See, there's quite a lot of colour in that linen. We're not going to do too much of that yet. So now back to the leaves. See, I'm bouncing all around. I'm trying to get the painting all done in one go. Hang on, just before I go back to the leaves, I'm just going to push that out a little bit. Not quite. There's a curve on it, which I didn't have in here too. Right, okay. Back to the leaves. I've got quite a lot of that paint still left over, so don't start sort of concentrating on the leaves. It's not going to do you any good. So just keep it vague. Dabs, dabs, dabs here and there. And I'm going to darken a bit of that sort of green again because it just needs to be darker in the shadow areas. But we can do that because it's oil painting, and we've done a good job on the what do you call it, the blocking in. There. We're not doing individual leaves again or individual petals. Okay. I'm being a bit gratuitous as well. Sometimes I'll put something in because I've got the paint on the brush, and it could sort of, I feel, you know, that little bit of dark there might help, that kind of thing. Because it's all sort of up to me now. It's sort of I'm trying to make this thing look good rather than make it into a photograph. Okay. See how vague it is. And now I'm going to do some just some sort of tonal variations or hue variations in the flowers. Give myself I'm putting a little bit of linseed oil into the paint actually, just to make it sort of move a little bit better. Okay, so I'm mixing a little bit of white. Just now, white will kill a bright color. So whenever you're making a bright color, you know, like a lemon or a flower head or something, you've got bright. No, I want it to be lighter. You can't put white in it to just bring it up. You have to put the next color up on the, you know, on the color wheel. You know, for example, so if you've got an orange and you want it to make a brighter orange, you put yellow into it. You don't put white into it. You only use white for the very, very brightest things, and then very sparingly. Okay, so I'm just putting in some where I see some very, very bright things. And I'm not being specific here. I'm being purposefully vague because you need to be vague because you don't want to invite people to say, that's not a hyacinth, you know, or something like that, whatever these flowers are. You just want people to say, oh, blimey, how did that happen? How did the artist achieve that? There's a more orangey part there. Okay, back to the leaves. We're bouncing around. Don't be specific because you don't want people to say, oh, the leaves weren't like that. Okay, we've got a couple of little sort of stalks in there, but you don't want to make them sort of obvious or criticizable. Okay, and now back to the background. Only this time I'm going to use the small brush. I'm shaping that, so a lot there. Shaping it to where I kind of want it to be. Okay, and then down there. Got the background here. We don't want to sort of do too much of that. Oh yeah, look, let's do a bit around the meniscus. Yeah. Okay, there's a darker part there. Some white got onto the brush there, but what harm? There. Dabs, 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 dabs. Oh, there's a kind of a dark. Running up there. Not being too specific. And there's a very, very dark greens. There's a kind of a mess of things going down there like that. Okay. Oh, here too. And you can see some lighter greens inside that blue. And now we're going to put on highlights. Okay, so highlights here. So we've got two kinds of highlights, in fact. Can you see? Right. So we've got those ones there, you know, which are strip lights actually, and you can see them repeated up in the under the neck. And then we've got the really bright highlights. Okay, so I'm going to do the strip light ones first, and they're kind of a very, very light blue with a bit of red into it, kind of a violet. Okay, but I'm not going to make too much of them because there's no need to be overly descriptive. See, they're not, they're just dabs put on in a kind of a judicious way rather than rather than an exact way, because we don't want to invite people to say you tried to make a photograph and it went wrong. We're engaged in making a painting which is dabby and alive. And now I'm going to put in the brightest bright, which is the top of the painting, I suppose. You know, it's the kind of, we call it the payoff, I suppose, in there. Okay, right. From now on, you're just sort of adjusting and doing things that you think will make the painting better. A bit of judicious sort of softening of parts of your painting. But not sort of over blending. If you blend and you don't have enough information in your painting, it'll kill your painting. It'll sort of go dead, flat. You don't want that. You want it to be a bit spontaneous and alive. There is a little dark there that I missed. It's a dark. Yeah. Okay. Now let me just sort of see whether it looks sort of more better on the other camera. I'm going to switch cameras. I'm going to turn you on actually. Unmute all, so you're all on. And if that, because the light is a bit strange on the other one. It keeps
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
That's good. Very good.
All right.
Very good. Very good.
All right. So you can see how vague it is. All right. And how dabby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And Kevin, to get the darkest blue, what colors did you use again?
Cobalt blue.
Yeah.
Permanent rose. Put into it, and I beefed it up with a little bit of black.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And did you say you use linseed?
Yeah, but all the paints that I have, well, in fact, the white and burnt umber, they've gone very sort of viscous in the tube, And so I just have a little dish of linseed oil with me, and I was just putting that into it when I felt it moving enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you?
One more question. Sorry.
So, right.
All those brushes, do you change? You know, like you're going from yellow to blue. Have you got a different brush?
What you need? No, most of the time I was painting with the same brush. That's very, very, very important.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you just wipe it down, and if you start to mix a bright color after using a dull or a dark color,
yes,
and some of it gets into your bright mix, and you just swear a lot and wipe the brush down again and do it again.
yes.
But what you don't really want to be doing is approaching your painting with one of those next to you.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it done. People roll out this big thing of brushes, and they only use sort of 3 of them anyway.
Yeah.
You keep your brushes down to as few as you can. Like if you're painting a big painting, you know, you might need a big brush.
Yes.
You might even need, you know, one of those. You've used that before. But for daily painting, what this kind of movement, this art movement, daily painting, about painting small and painting often, you need 3 brushes at most. One for doing a wash, one for covering sort of most of the large areas, and then a kind of a small brush, but not even a detailing brush. You know, sort of something that's reasonably sort of.
Thank you.
Because you don't want to be getting into absolute details. You don't got a number 0 brush. Start coming up.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Kevin. As long as there weren't stupid questions that I asked.
No. See, none of these questions are stupid, because I'll tell you why. It's that many of those books and the DVDs and the painting programs that you come across, they're too complicated, or they seem to assume that you know something already that you may well not know. But the very basic things, like, well, which brushes do I use? What kind of brushes? You know, which ones are for oil paints? Which ones are for acrylics? Which ones are for watercolors? Why is the canvas I'm painting on terrible? Why is it soaking away the oils? And turns out that they didn't put enough or the right gesso onto the canvas. There's so many variables here, and so many basic things that if you don't get right, it just take you longer to learn to paint. Yeah. Because the equipment is working against you, and that's just equipment. Then there's the whole painting process. So none of these questions are stupid. They need to be answered.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
Listen, thank you so much for a lovely morning. What time is it now? It's 11:10. Didn't we do well? Actually,
we did.
Not too bad.
We did very well. Yeah. I might tune in for tomorrow as well if I can still book.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. And it'll be run along the same way. I'll have to put something different up now, won't I? These flowers will never last. They were wilting when I brought them in. So
I'll very good. That was amazing. Right. Thank you, Kevin.
That was great. Lovely to have you.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
And thank you very much.
Have a lovely day.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.